Hey, do me a favor if you don't mind. Like this video and subscribe. Share it with somebody you think might need it. Thank you for stopping by my YouTube channel, checking out these videos where I'm sharing the gospel that I grew up on. Don't be too hard on me. I'm just sharing the way that I understood it and understand it, and trying to shed some light on some of the things that I'm seeing now, and understanding that the good news is really good news, and God is more better. So we've been talking about in these series of videos, talking about the gospel that I grew up on, and now we're discussing the gospel that I'm coming to see and understand. And it's really good news. I'm telling you, it's good news. We ended the last video talking about, and I'm going to read it again because I just want to look at it. Ephesians chapter 1 verse 4, but I ended on Jeremiah chapter 1 and verse 5, talking about how the Lord, he told Jeremiah, I knew you before I formed you. And he's over here David talking to him about how that God was working in his inner self, making David in the womb. So it's safe to say that God is in charge and God is involved in the conception and birth of individuals. He knows them before he forms them in the womb. God sends the Spirit to in the womb with the sperm impregnating the egg. Boom, there's life. That Spirit comes and indwells. God has done these things. And I mean, there's a verse that comes to mind in the Old Testament where, and this is the King James version of it, that he causes the heart to calve. I believe is what he says. But basically what he's saying is he causes the deer to give birth. And don't you think if God's in charge of the birthing of deer or cows or dogs or whatever, if God's in charge of that, I think he's in charge of everybody that comes into this planet. He says, I knew you. He knows you. And you know him. Maybe you're not awakened to it. It's in him that we have our very origin. And I think I said it in the last video, but Francois Detort, the Mirror Bible translator, talking about Ephesians 1 and 4, that God found us in Christ before he lost us, or we were lost in Adam. God found us in Christ before we were lost in Adam. And that's all I'm saying, that God did something before time, before he did anything, he did something in Christ that included me and it included you, because God knew you before he formed you in your mother's womb. And that's what he told. How did he say it? I haven't read it in this translation, but let's just see. Oh, it's this way. Galatians chapter 1 and verse 15. The Apostle Paul here, he says, but then God called me by his grace and chose me from my birth to be his. He was pleased to unveil his Son in me so that I would proclaim him to the peoples of the world. Let me read that to you out of the King James Bible. Galatians 1, verse 15. But when it pleased God who separated me from my mother's womb and called me by his grace. Now we've learned from David and Jeremiah that God forms us in the womb. He formed Paul in the womb, and he knew Paul before he formed him in the womb. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you before I formed you in the womb. That's all I'm saying. Verse 16, verse 15, he separated me from my mother's womb and called me by his grace to reveal his Son in me, that I might preach him among the heathen. And you know, that was the message that Paul preached to the Gentiles. Christ in you, the hope of glory. It's his desire to preach and to build up every man into the fullness of the stature of Christ. Every man. It's right there in the Bible. Christ in you and Christ in me. How so? Well, God did something before he did anything. Right here. In love, he chose us before he laid the foundation of the world, the foundation of the universe. Because of his great love, he ordained us so that we would be seen as holy in his eyes with an unstained innocence. This is how God views humanity, because humanity was chosen in Christ before the foundation of the world, because of his great love. That we might be seen as holy, we're set apart, separated in his eyes with an unstained innocence. God sees us with an unstained innocence. Why? Because we're wrapped into Christ. He sees us wrapped into Christ. It is in him that we live and move and have our being. Now listen to this. He says he ordained us so that we would be seen. That we would be seen. The King James, let me read it to you. Verse 4, according as he hath chosen us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him in love. That word, before him in love, before is the word I'm talking about. It says it right here, that we would be seen before. The Greek word is katanopian. I don't know that I'm saying it right, but that's okay. Katanopian. And what the word means, literally, is wholly in the eye, or completely in the eye. In other words, before him. And this is our origin. Wholly in the eye, completely in the eye of God, that we might be seen before him. We are in his face, as it were, as my good friend Larry Hudson told me about one time. When God breathed into Adam's nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Adam became a living soul. He opened his eyes. For the very first time, he was in the face of God, face to face. That, my friend, is our origin. That is where we come from. Before I formed you, I knew you. He associated us in Christ before the foundation of the world, before the fall. And this word, before, that we should be holy, we're set apart, without blame, before him in love. He says it this way, with an unstained innocence, that we might be holy in his eyes, with an unstained innocence, holy in the eye, completely in his eye, face to face with the apple of his eye. God sees us, and he knows us. He knows who we are. And this is our origin before time. Before time. Hey, thanks for stopping by. Like and subscribe if you don't mind. Share it with somebody. Help me get the word out.